Good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining in our 6th annual Durban Symposium. This specific conversation is going to enlighten you, it is going to invigorate you, and I'm really excited to be part of this. I wanted to introduce you to our moderator today, first of all. She has got quite a bio, and it is super impressive. So I'll read it out to you, and for you to get to know her a little bit more, and then I will start, or I will introduce the speakers to you. So Lorato Modongo is a social psychologist and currently a program manager for the Breaking Down Borders Africa, a youth platform that creates networking, collaborations, and partnerships between African youth movements across socio-economic and political spaces. She previously lectured research methodology at the Public Health at the Institute of Development Management in Botswana and worked for the United Nations Populations Fund in Botswana in the gender unit. Lorato's primary areas of interest include knowledge creation on social psychology, gender-based violence, and African intersectional feminist thought. She is a psychology graduate from Stellenbosch University and University of Botswana. She completed an advanced course in civil society law with the University of Pretoria Center for Human Rights. Lorato is a 2014 Mandela Rhodes Scholar, a 2015 Mandela Washington Fellow under Civic Leadership, and a 2013 Women Deliver Fellow. She volunteers on a number of civil society, locally and internationally, and occasionally contribute to publications, including Mail and Guardian Thought Leader. So thank you for joining us, Lorato, and thank you for steering this conversation. I'm really excited for you to be part of this. So, secondly, I wanted to introduce to you our amazing speakers, and both of them sent us their bios, which I think is terribly underrated. And I certainly think that, Lorato, you need to maybe advise them on how they should improve on their bios. So I will read you, I'll first read you Wenzile Madonsela's bio. Madonsela is a social entrepreneur, mental health activist, and a democracy defender. She is passionately dedicated to closing the gaps that social injustice creates in South Africa and globally. She dynamically advocates for and is involved in sustainable programs that are geared towards empowering people, specifically through enterprise development and mental wellness advocacy. Now, I've known Wenzile for a little while, and I can tell you that that bio doesn't do her justice. She has done an amazing array of activist work that has made some real changes in this country. And I can certainly say that her work extends far beyond those few lines that she has sent over to us. But we're very, very grateful to have you, Wenzile, and really happy for you to join the conversation. Grace.
Thank you so much.
Grace, I am incredibly happy for you to join all the way from Rwanda. And Grace is a lived experience mental health and NCDs advocate living in Kigali, Rwanda. She works as an advisor for the Wellcome Trust Mental Health Priority Area and is a commissioner on the Lancet Commission on Gender-Based Violence and Maltreatment. She's also a young leader for the Lancet Commission for Global Mental Health and Sustainable Development. Grace is passionate about meaningful youth involvement, particularly for under-resourced and underrepresented and least heard populations in the world. And again, that bio certainly also does not do justice to all of the amazing work that Grace has done over the years, and also gives so much to her community and to different communities. There's not enough words to explain how much she actually does and give every day. So with that, I want to hand over to Lorato, and I would like to say thank you for joining us, and we will proceed.
A very good afternoon to you, Wenzile and Grace. Again, I'm very happy to be moderating this conversation with you. I was reading your bios, your profile, and I'm just amazed by the work, the incredible and necessary work that you do in the continent and in your respective countries regarding mental health advocacy. So how are you doing, Wenzile?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I love your lips. They're red. They don't lie. I'm happy to be amongst a group of dynamic and just incredible women, and ready to steer this conversation in a way that has meaning and impact. And it's nice to connect from around all over the continent, just coming together under one banner. So
thank you and welcome. And you know what they say, when in doubt, wear red lipstick. It has some superpower.
Can feel it.
Hello, Grace. Good afternoon to you in Kigali.
Hi, it's a bit windy here today, but I too am very excited to be here. In fact, this might be the most excited I've been to do this ever, because it's just us African women, you know?
Yeah. Keep it real.
Yeah. Okay. So welcome as well, Grace. So our conversation is just going to be, a conversation, as we said, just, try to talk and co-create knowledge and share perspectives around mental health advocacy and what we envision for the next decade. So I'm going to start with you, Wenzile, looking or drawing from your own lived experiences, right? How have they shaped or rather impacted your own desire and work in the mental health advocacy space?
I read that question and it took me aback, because I realized that everything that we advocate for and work towards as mental health advocates is a human experience. It's such a real, intimate, vulnerable human experience, that incorporates many things. And one of the things as a mental health advocate that I've found is that once you understand yourself and create enough bravery or courage in your heart, it becomes a rippling effect. So as soon as you keep quiet and start speaking your truth, the ripples stop rippling, the waves stop crashing. But for as long as you as a person are speaking your truth, speaking your power, whatever it is, the thing is, with the lived experience, it's a genuine thing. It doesn't have to have too many elements. It doesn't require PhDs. It doesn't require ratification from anybody. It is you and how you have identified with this real human experience and lived journey. So in that sense, it's shaped advocacy to me in a way that every single person, I see them with a new lens, because I understand that they're looking at life through their own lens, and I can't come prescriptive. It's as if an optometrist, going to an optometrist, and you go and see them, and then they give you glasses that they take the measurements and the prescription of someone else and put it on you and say that these are glasses and expect you to see. No, every time it's a fresh experience. It's new elements that play a role. So I've been challenged in that to not let my own lived experience as well to use that lens to look at someone else's journey. Everything is new. It's a fresh perspective. It's a new perspective. There are foundations in which we look at mental health through which are the basic foundations. But ultimately, for me, it's been an incredible journey of intimacy with oneself, and allowing that intimacy to find a place in society, to find a voice in society without feeling naked, or without feeling that will be misused by society, and still feeling protected, because as I said before, it's quite a vulnerable experience in that sense.
Thank you so much, Wenzile. I really love how you brought in the aspect that the advocacy is also laced with a lot of intimacy and vulnerability, particularly in a world that sees advocacy as a one-size-fits-all, you know, and that is why sometimes in different contexts, different cultures, you find that one advocacy tool doesn't necessarily work in another culture. But I really love the intimacy and the vulnerability that you bring in, that allows you perspective to see everybody else as a new person on their own. So I'm just going to extend this question to you as well, Grace. Looking back and drawing from your own lived experiences, how have they shaped your advocacy in the mental health space?
Thank you. I
Hello,
really
Grace.
loved Wenzile. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Thank
can
you.
hear you.
Thank you. I really loved Wenzile's answer about intimacy and closeness, because that's not something you think about when you're going through a situation of any situation, actually. So for me, my journey with mental health started really young, like maybe even like a year old, because my parents were actually, even before I was born, because you know Rwanda and Burundi have been were in conflict in the 90s, and that's where I'm from. And my mom escaped during the genocide against the Tutsi, and so she definitely transferred something. I'm just saying. But growing up, I felt very, very isolated, very, very alone, because I grew up as a refugee with my parents in Uganda, and no one there could understand my experience because they had not had the same growing up. I remember feeling, you know, scared. I remember feeling things that I didn't really describe or put a name to, but that made me different from other people, and I hated it. I resented it. I just wanted to be normal, but I'd get anxiety, I'd cry, I'd get panic attacks. And so this went on until, at least sadly actually, until 2018, when I was asked to join the Lancet Commission as a youth leader. And I met other young leaders, and I heard the term lived experience for the first time. And I think it made me feel very empowered. It made me feel things that I'd never felt before, because you know, when you spent most of your lifetime experiencing mental challenges, you feel unable to control aspects of yourself. You feel like you are the whim of a shaky brain that's going to fail you at some point. But when I met Chantel and I met the other leaders, and they said, this is lived experience, this is normal. We are normal. We may be different from others, but this is also a different kind of normal. I think it empowered me. I learned that I could take control of myself, and I could also help other people to take control of themselves. I could advocate for people like me, for young children like me, who are always alone, who are scared. And so that's why I advocate from. I advocate from knowing that feeling of powerlessness, and knowing that when we stand up and speak about our experiences, even though they are painful, and even though that they make you feel shaky and out of breath, knowing that there's someone out there who's watching, and realizing that they're not alone. Just how I felt when I met Chantel, and when I met the other young leaders, and when I learned about lived experience. I think that can change the world for them. It can make them hold on to hope. And I guess that's what we're working on for. That's what motivates us as advocates. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Grace, and for just mentioning how you sort of standing in the power of your experiences to initiate change in your life and other young people's lives as well, children and young people. And I'm going to bring in the next question to you again, Grace. Considering that you are what is termed a lived experience advocate, right? And you currently have access to powerful spaces, powerful decision making spaces, policy making spaces. For example, you are now a youth leader for the Lancet Commission, right? And you're also serving in the board on the strategic advisory board of the Wellcome Trust, right? I just want to find out a little bit more, or can you please share with us a little bit more about your experience in these spaces? Do you think that your voice is as impactful? Do you think that it's actually listened to and the action you propose is initiated?
Thank you. That's a good question. And I honestly have been thinking about this a lot in the past few days. I'm going to take a pause here to ask, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Yes, so I'd say that I'm privileged more than other young people at this point because I do have access to these spaces. And some of the big I think have been that with other young leaders, we are starting to be heard. We are starting to be listened to. People have started using the term lived experience more often because this is something that young people have been pushing. They've been pushing for these in spaces that have, so basically what I can say is that we're standing on the backs of young people that have been pushing for lived experience to be more mainstream, beginning in the early 2000s. And so I have to recognize that. I have to recognize that there's so many people, mental health advocates, who push for this at a time when, we're still seen as demon-possessed, mad people. And they worked hard and they fought and they fought for this space. So I'm very privileged to be in a space like that. And I think that more than ever, people are starting to listen. However, one of the biggest challenges we've had is that the people who are listening are the people who wanted to listen in the first place. So like Wellcome Trust, they already had their agenda to listen to young people, right? They already planned for young people to be a part of their board, for young people to dictate how their programs are. Maybe this is due to the work of people before us, but they put us on because they have people that have been thinking like this. But it's still a bit hard for us to penetrate spaces as young people that are necessary, like decision-making places, like policy-making spaces, because they're still very resistant to hearing our message. They're still very narrative to change for many reasons. And that's the challenge. That's one of the challenges. The second challenge is when they say that they want a lived experience advisor or they want a lived experience person as part of their work, they always select one person, right? Or they always select just one area of lived experience, or just one. They never diversity of lived experience. They never think that there's another thing about my employers or people who I've worked with, but the people who I've spoken to in these conferences that we used to go to before COVID, we still see short-sightedness and tokenism as advocates. And I think we've now, introduced lived experience. And now I think the time has come for us to because what's the use of having a lived experience person living a lived experience advocate if they're just going to be, like maybe white only, or, just one person representing the majority, or, we need to get rid of tokenism. And so I'd say my experience has been 50-50. It's very interesting to be a part of this, and I'm very privileged, but also we still have a long way to go. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Grace. And you're actually right. It's a privilege to be in these spaces because there's so many barriers to actually accessing them. And you're talking about homogenizing of experiences. They're taking Lorato, and I'll be the only person who's being selected to represent young people in all the spaces, but I don't carry. So it sort of defeats the purpose, And earlier, Wenzile, you talked about how being a lived experience advocate sort of taught you that the knowledge that you bring in is important. You don't necessarily need a PhD in this area. The knowledge that you bring or that you've gained from your life experiences sort of qualifies you to be in this space. How have your experience been? I'm just extending the same question I just asked Grace. How have your experience been in these spaces? Do you think you're being listened to? Is there impact?
Thank you, Lorato. Thank you, Grace, for being so open about your story. And there's so much power in your story. I still see that even though we're on safe platforms like this, I didn't speak about my lived experience. I almost spoke about it as an abstract because you still have that fear that you will be judged according to your lived experience, even if in the safest of spaces, which is something that immediately got me to go back to a grassroots level and see how we can advocate. By grassroots here, I'm talking about tertiary. How we can go back there and how we can infiltrate, persuade and change the landscape of how mental health looks on campuses. So some of the work we've been doing here in South Africa is creating precedents for universities to create mental health policies. In our data collection from all the universities within South Africa, we found 3 universities that had a mental health policy, and out of 3 universities, only 1 was implementing the policies as part in the modus operandi as an institution. So one of the things that I believe has been a hindrance to implementing policy in tertiary education is resources. We found that there is a lack of resources or access to the psychologist, the counselor. People are not stepping up as mental health champions because of the stigmas that that are talked about when it comes to mental health. So you'll find someone who has been receiving help and does have a lived experience, but doesn't have the confidence and the voice to say that my lived experience is an empowering tool for someone else to drive change in their own lives. They see it as a thing that I need to deal with this behind shadows, behind closed doors, after the sun has set. And it became very increasingly important for us to prescribe when universities are drafting their own policies to consider destigmatization. So not only access of mental health facilities, but to almost recondition how people perceive mental health on campus, because a large population of students are facing mental health challenges, but they're not aware that they're facing mental health challenges because they see mental health as a one-dimensional thing. So depression, anxiety, there isn't that huge scope of different disorders and different disabilities. And on this side, on my side as an advocate, I don't blame them. For instance, the other day I was reading a document about the universal health coverage, and in it, when they were speaking about non-communicable diseases, they mentioned heart disorders, high blood pressure, low blood pressure, etc., and then mental health. And I was like, how? But where are the listings of mental illnesses? Or the non-communicable diseases mental illness. So if people are being exposed to that kind of language and sneak it underneath the rug behavior, it is very difficult for them to step up, even as student leaders within the universities, to come up and say that, okay, we want to run programs where we champion mental health. We partner with universal campaigns like Speak Your Mind. You know, we make mental health not sexy. I don't want to use that word, but we make it as it is. Mental illness is if you have a mental illness, you don't have to now use the word mental well-being for the purposes of stigma. No, you destigmatize in your policies. You look at the linguistics that you're using and be very intentional about it. Be very intentional about the wording you're using whilst creating access. So it's been a huge thing on this side to create access, more access, because I was a person that was denied access for a large part of my lived experience because my disorder wasn't classified under prescribed minimum benefits. And I fought with the medical aides and said that what constitutes this as not to be a prescribed minimum benefit, because if you look at basic healthcare, if I don't have this, I'm affected, or if someone else doesn't have access to this kind of medication or treatment, you are potentially creating health hazards and illnesses that may cause fatalities in their lives. So it was a long journey, and eventually I was given prescribed minimum benefits for my disorder, but I probably am one in a million South Africans who have prescribed minimum benefit for my own lived experience and the disorder that I was prescribed with. So yeah, I think a lot of it is destigmatization and creating access and responsibility. Yeah, access in corporate social responsibilities as well. In corporate, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Wenzile, for sharing that, and also the important work that you're doing with the universities and the mental health policies. When you were talking about implementing the policies, it reminded me of, there was a conversation around sexual harassment policies in universities as well, and how many universities have not implemented those, and there's an aspect of mental health in there that is lacking. And you talked quite briefly about some of the barriers. You talked about stigma surrounding mental health issues. And I think 2 months ago, there was a hashtag on Twitter when people saying, if our parents went to therapy with us, what would happen? And the responses you could see, I don't know if you saw that one. Yes. The responses they were sad and hilarious at the same time, but they were bringing to the fore the amount of stigma surrounding mental health challenges. And I'm going to bring it back to you again. I know you touched on it in part, but I want you to go a step deeper and just let's talk about some of the strategies that you think should be employed in overcoming some of these barriers regarding mental health advocacy.
I think debunking myths is one of the hugest aspects. Another lived experience that I have in my family is that I have an aunt who's now passed away, and her child was born with autism. And up until the day she died, her family held her responsible for the behavior and the state of this child because they were convinced that she dropped the kid. She dropped the child. And that is the reason why he's autistic. That is the way he's unable to communicate in a certain way. That's the reason why everything that he was experiencing was because of the drop. And it divided a whole entire family because they wouldn't take into account what Western medicine is saying around certain things, because there's also that thing that you bringing in Western culture and Western prescriptions of what something is. And where does that leave space for cultural knowledge? And I think the two have never fused. Western knowledge and cultural knowledge when it comes to mental health. So it creates a complete split, and it creates myths around albinism, Down syndrome, bulimia, depression, anxiety, all of that. I think a lot of work that has to be done is debunking the myths around mental illnesses, and I think holistic approaches. So instead of us always focusing on how we can treat it with one thing, your mental illness, look at holistic approaches to treating the illness, and trying to find different and dynamic, creative ways to be able to bring mental illness to the forefront in mainstream. Grace talked about bringing mental illness into mainstream. I think that is of utmost importance, because if it's in mainstream, then we get the impact, then we get the conversations, then we get the big guys coming in, then we get the funding, we get the money. But right now, if you look at the indicators under sustainable goal number 3, and where they said they'd like for mental health to be versus where it is now, the indicators show that it's going to dismally fail. The plan that World Health Organization has and the United Nations. Currently, there is very little progress. It indicates that the conversations aren't being pushed hard enough. They're not being put into the mainstream. So I think putting it first on the agenda, the way that women in the first, second, third wave, fourth wave, fifth wave, all the ways pushed for it to be in every single conversation. It is not oh, by the way. You speak about finance, you speak about mental health, you speak about farming, you speak about mental health, you speak about mining, you speak about mental health, speak about teaching, mental health, parenting, mental health, working in the entertainment industry, mental health. So mental health is an integral part of everything that we do. Thus, it cannot be considered as an oh, by the way topic anymore. It goes hand in hand with every other kind of program that is being pushed. So I think, like Grace did say, we need to fight for it increasingly to become part of the mainstream, but also being aware of what are the words we are using when we're pushing it into mainstream agendas. What are the linguistics around it? Because certain words and linguistics can create stigma. And stigma then breeds unfair discrimination. Yes, I hope I answered your question a little bit more.
Yeah, you definitely did. I mean, you touched on funding opportunities, because I mean, currently in the world, less than 2% of the global million for the health budget is allocated to mental health. Yet, as you're saying, mental health is an integral part of our lives. We cannot talk anything else and not also touch on the mental health aspect. I mean, just as the physical being is important, the mental or the psychological being is also important. You know, you cannot divorce the two from each other. So thank you so much, Wenzile, for sharing that. And time runs so fast when you're having fun. There's only 15 minutes left. And I'm going to take it to you, Grace. Grace, are you there?
Yes. Hi.
Aha, great. So we're going to try and balance. We have about 10 minutes left, so we're going to have to rush through the remaining questions. And Grace, I just wanted to ask you, looking at the next decade, right, here in the continent, what are some of the opportunities that we see in terms of mental health advocacy?
That's a good question. My overall dream for mental health is three-pronged, right? I hope that people with lived experience have more agency in my lifetime to determine what happens to them. And I don't care what they say. I hope that we are in charge of what happens to us. That means policy making, that means medication, that means, life in general. I'm ready for us to take charge. I'm ready for us to have a voice. I'm ready for us to be mainstream. Sorry, Wenzile, I'm saying that again. Secondly, I hope that we can decolonize global mental health so that it it reflects the perspective on ground. You know, I know that we've started with, you know, the friendship bench in Zimbabwe, where they use, you know, people, upstanding members of the community, who old ladies who sit down and speak to young people. And you know, that's how we used to be. That's African culture. That's using culture to change, right? To make change. That moves the perspective from, you know, old, I mean, African tradition is outdated and maybe bad, to we must use our culture if we need to see change in Africa. And I'm ready for that to become mainstream. I know that in Rwanda we use community health workers to go and visit mental health patients in different villages, and it has proved life-changing, because I love telling this story. There's a village that I went to where former people with lived experience decided to become community health workers themselves, and now they're the ones doing the outreach. They're the ones going out into the villages to find the other people who have been alienated and shackled and all of those things, and now they're the ones making change. And that's what I wish for Africa. And thirdly, I hope that we start doing research led and done by local researchers, PI'd by local researchers, published to a local audience, so that we can put science in our hands, that we can provide evidence to our claims, and we can take charge of our own future. And that's also under decolonizing. So yeah, let's decolonize mental health, guys.
Yes, absolutely agree and love that, Grace, absolutely. So Wenzile, looking at the next 10 years, what are some of the major opportunities, major trends that we can leverage on in the mental health advocacy space?
Thank you, Lorato, and thank you, Grace, again for your insights. So I'm very excited for the future of mental health. In the late hours of the night, I am also a digital inclusion activist. So for me, the fourth industrial revolution brings many opportunities. There are issues that the fourth industrial revolution will bring about, such as isolation, increasing depression, anxiety due to social media, etc., etc. But I'm also very excited. Last year I was a candidate sent for One Young World in London, and one of the speakers there spoke around using games like Pokemon Go. There was a time that there's this game that came out, Pokemon Go, where you look for things and it's fictional characters, but allowing you to walk in real spaces. It was a trend for quite a while, but he was using examples such as that about how we can integrate mental health with technology. So in that instance, you are forced to leave your house. You're forced to leave isolation because there might be a point 5 kilometers down the road. You might have to talk to someone else, someone who's from a different culture, a different religion, a different race, because you're trying to win a game. So there are these things that you have to do, but that completely take you out of your comfort zone. So it's an amazing way to use fun and technology to come up with sustainable solutions for mental health. I also look at AI, artificial intelligence, and augmented reality as means to champion the fight for mental health to be in the mainstream. So for instance, with AI, with robotics and androids and humanoids being created, create companionship, program them, use the data that you get around mental health, and program them to react to that, so that you can even have a space where technology allows you to predict when someone is in a danger zone of suicide due to the data that the program may have, or the robot may have, and how they react to that. So I think augmented reality is also something that's incredible, where a reality is put in front of you, but you're not there. So you can climb a mountain, you can ride a bicycle. In that same sense, you can have your therapist there, but almost in lifetime, where it doesn't feel that they're far, or I'm zooming, or it's a virtual. It's creating a
Yeah.
reality that's obviously augmented in order to meet the needs of whatever the purpose of that augmentation is. So I think there's a huge space to get creative as mental health advocates around augmented reality and AI and gaming, and just to use that as a way as well to go with the time so that we don't fall behind, because we're already behind on the agenda. So now we're going to play catch up. No, we just need to dive right in there, see what technology there is, see what kind of programs there are, and influence with gamers, influence with programmers, machine learning. I think it's an excellent thing. We have those Fitbit watches. Well, I don't have a Fitbit, but there's those Fitbit watches, those smart watches that can take your heartbeat and your heart rate and your stress levels. What else can it do? If programmed in a way that we have influence and we have a say amongst the makers of these products, how far can we push the technology in order to include the mental health agenda?
Absolutely, Wenzile, absolutely. And when you're talking innovation, fourth industrial revolution, digital spaces, I'm also here thinking about accessibility as well. Not just access to internet, but quality internet where things are not freezing because and then somebody in the village does not get to access these wonderful programs that we're talking about. Like I said, time has just done a number on us. So I'm going to give the both of you 1 minute each, 1 minute on the dot, to just give us your final thoughts, your last closing word, so that we take it back to Chantel. Wenzile, you may go ahead.
Thank you, Lorato. So for me, I'd just like to say to everyone, whatever your part is, whatever you believe it is, play it well. Be authentic to your own journey, whatever your journey comes with. It's not baggage, it's a lived experience, it's a human experience, it's a journey. So in that, hold yourself in high regard and know that you have power. Your story has power, your presence has power, your past has power. Every single part about you has power. You are God's gift to humanity, and the world wouldn't be as it is without you in it. And love yourself, love the world you live in, make changes where you can. If you can't, don't blame yourself, you can't change the world, but love each other, have empathy, and just be good to yourself and do good to others as well in whatever spaces you are in.
Thank you, Wenzile. Grace, are you there? Grace? I think we might have lost Grace there. Grace?
Yes, can you hear me?
Aha, yes, I can hear you.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Sorry. One, make accessible internet for everyone. Sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
So one, my message to policymakers is that we are here and there's nothing to lose with engaging us as lived experience advocates. And so do that. Reach out to, there's people with lived experience everywhere. So reach out to them, have them give you wisdom, because we have a lot of it from our experiences. My message to other advocates is that your story is valid regardless. Don't ever listen to when people say that your story is too little, too much, or you didn't go through as much oppression as the other. Whatever you went through is valid. You do not need to compare yourself to anyone, and your work is valid, and we are seeing it, and we are holding you, and we're a sisterhood, or a fraternity. I don't know what the word is, but it's like a sisterhood, a fraternity. We see you, we're here, and we're reaching out. I mean, my message to people living with mental health challenges is that I love you and hold on. Things are changing. We are trying to change them. There are people everywhere trying to them. So just hold on, have that hope that it's going to be okay. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah. So.
Thank you so much, Grace. Thank you so much, Grace and Wenzi, for just taking out your time and having this conversation and just, co-creating knowledge and sharing some of your perspectives, and also just sharing some of your intimate experiences around mental health. And what I got from the conversation here is that there's need for funding and prioritizing mental health. There's need for debunking some of the myths surrounding mental health issues, and also decoloniality, as Grace, you talked about decoloniality and research and knowledge creation around mental health in Africa, particularly by our researchers here, contextualizing the research so that we can use it for evidence-based approaches. And also when as you said, the utilization of innovative digital spaces to create programs that can be accessed by all as we move into the next decade regarding mental health. So I'm very grateful to have been in conversation with the both of you. So Chantel.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. Gosh, guys, thank you for being part of this. It is just incredible to listen to you in the background. And I'm so happy that you were all three able to meet each other, because I think the three of you are quite a force to deal with. So I'm really happy that you had this conversation. It was so inspiring. And as a mental health advocate myself, I understand the vulnerability that you go through in sharing any of your experiences, and also the impact it has and the possible exhaustion it has in being an advocate and continuously speaking about things that are quite personal and that are impacting other people. So I would like to say thank you for giving energy and time to this today. And yes, we will be hosting we are hosting this on the 10th of October, which is in commemoration of World Mental Health Day. So it certainly is the right time. And I think there are a lot of young people and a lot of people who can find a lot of inspiration by what you have said today. And yes, we are certainly willing to engage further. And you are also able to connect with them over different social media platforms. I know that Grace and Wenzi are quite active on socials. I'm not sure about Lorato. I don't follow you, but I'm sure there might be some connection there too, but we'll post that on the links too. So thank you again to everyone. I think what I wanted to do before we go, if we can have one quick selfie and give us a good smile, because a smile's also good for your mental health. So if you can give us your best ones, I'm going to have a quick selfie. And yes, let's do it. I'll count us down. 3, 2, 1. Brilliant. Thank you, lovely ladies. We'll be in touch soon, and take it easy. Take care of yourselves.